Good to see all your sweet faces this morning. Okay, it's 11 o'clock. We'll begin. Om Sahana Vavatu Sahano Bhunaktu Sahaviryam Karavavai Tejasvina Vaditamastu Mavidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. May the Divine Being look over us lovingly as a mother and father. May the Divine Being support and nourish us as a mother and father. May we have the strength and skill to study together the art of spirituality. May no misunderstandings arise amongst us. Om, peace, peace, peace be unto us and to all beloved beings everywhere. Just a little side note. Those of you who don't follow the Dalai Lama, you're missing out. The Dalai Lama, as he ages, is becoming sweeter and sweeter and simpler and simpler. And so the things that he says are so straight from his heart and so meaningful to us in this very difficult time. So, he has a website and a Facebook page and all that. So if you want to have a peek at what he's saying. So with that, we're studying the book called Realizing God, a collection of Swami Prabhavananda's lectures. This is the lecture on ritualism. And we've covered the reasons for ritualism, the training of the mind, the dawning of reverence, and of course, just the benefits of a regular spiritual discipline. And so now we'll move into the Swami's discourse. Now the question arises, who is there to worship whom? The point is that you become a god to worship God. You use some seed words that make this body, which is built up of sacred words, into the deity himself. So you use some seed words, bijas. You use some seed words that make this body, which is built up of sacred words, into the deity himself that you are worshiping, your chosen ideal. You think that the limbs, the senses, and sense organs are all those of your chosen ideal. You, the small self you, are no longer there. You have become one with the Lord. And then you meditate. As you meditate, you have a mudra or gesture of the hand. If you look at the standing photographs of Ramakrishna, you find his fingers in a certain position. That is the meditation mudra. Holding a flower in this mudra, you meditate. After this meditation, you put that flower on your head and worship God within. As you worship God within, you offer the different elements, your mind, your senses, your everything to him. Now this is an actual practice. This is not just something that you imagine. You actually sense, you feel this relationship. You offer the different elements, your mind. The different elements are fire, water, air, ether, earth. You offer those elements and your mind, your senses, your everything to him. Then again, you do the nyasa, purification, touching the body, and continue to think that it is made up of mantra, not physical matter. And of course, from the yogic point of view, that is the fact. It's also true from the point of view of physics. There is no such thing as matter. There is only vibration. Matter is only a way of understanding what our experience and action suit does with that vibration and turns it into what seems to be matter. But physicists and yogis will tell you that there is nothing, and of course the Vedas also tell us this, the Upanishads, there is nothing but vibration. And so that's what it means when it says you continue to think that your body is made up of mantra, which is vibration, not physical matter. Then you meditate with a flower. Then you meditate with the flower. You place that flower before the image. You have breathed into it your Atman, the divinity that is within you. In other words, this is something that the flower has received the essence of your divine presence, the Atman, and now the Swami explains, through that flower, you bring the Lord from within your heart and you place it before the image. Now you see the Lord before you. In the image and in the flower. Next, you offer the different items, incense, perfume, light, and so on. Then you practice japa of the mantra that has been given to you by your guru. Usually 108 times, although sometimes it's accelerated and it's done fewer times. But usually in puja, it's 108 times. You practice japa of the mantra that has been given to you by your guru. Lastly, you offer the fruits of everything you have done in the worship to the Lord. And then all you seek, all you pray for is pure devotion, pure love, and pure knowledge. So I'm going to read just that last. Then again, you do the nyasa, purification, touching the body, and continue to think that it is made up of mantra, not physical matter. This is such a crucial idea that we are not a material being. And Vivekananda emphasizes this over and over. Particularly if you'll find those thoughts in inspired talks. The talks that he gave in Thousand Island Park after he had a realization of Nirvikalpa Samadhi. This is why they're called inspired talks. He had about a dozen of his very close disciples, primarily from the Northeast, with him. And he just began to be like an artesian spring that had been uncapped. And one of the things that he emphasizes over and over is that you are not a physical, you are not a material being, you are a spiritual being. And that it's like Vyasa, not Vyasa, Vashishta. It's like Vashishta said to Rama, Rama, all that you experience through your sense organs and organs of action is nothing more than a vibration of consciousness. So you are a vibration of consciousness. You think that you are made up of mantra, not physical matter. Then you meditate with a flower. You place that flower before the image. You have breathed into it. Your Atman. That is to say, through a breath exercise, that's part of the puja practice, you have taken the sense of the Atman within and put it into the flower. The divinity, the Atman, the divinity that is in you. Through that flower, you bring the Lord from within your heart and you place it before the image. Now you see the Lord before you as both the image and the Atman in the flower. Next, you offer the different items, incense, perfume, light, and so on. Then you practice japa of the mantra that has been given to you by your guru. Why do you do that? That particular mantra, that mantra that was given to you by your guru, contains the spiritual power, the spiritual treasure of your chosen ideal. It doesn't matter what the chosen ideal is, what form or formless aspect of God it is that the heart of your mantra. All of that spiritual power, that spiritual treasure, is inherent in the mantra. So the more you practice it, and particularly as you practice it in these established ways, which is called ritualistic ways, you begin to sense the power of it. You begin to feel that there is something there. And what happens over time is that you find that the mantra is constantly running in the thought currents of your mind. You may not be aware of it a good deal of the time, but you then become aware of it from time to time. Lastly, as you finish the puja, the worship, lastly, you offer the fruits of everything that you have done in the worship to the Lord. And then all you seek, all you pray for is pure devotion, pure love, and pure knowledge. And as Sri Ramakrishna said over and over, pure devotion, pure love, pure knowledge, they are all the divine. They are the same thing as pure spirit, pure consciousness. So you pray that that is what fills your awareness. Pure devotion, pure love, pure knowledge. And so that concludes that particular talk. Most of you have been with us through the couple of weeks we've been working with this talk. So please, any thoughts, comments, questions, anything you would like to contribute to this study of the art of spirituality together.
Brother Shankara?
Mm-hmm.
Is the chosen ideal chosen by you or for you? Because the mind gets more easily, naturally attracted to certain ideals, and some you have to like make an effort. So, what is the direction?
One thing, Swayam, if you could move a little closer to the microphone. I heard your question, but it was a struggle. So there we go. That'll help. When you are sitting back like that, it becomes like an echo chamber.
Do you need me to repeat it?
And so is the chosen ideal chosen for you, or do you choose it? The way that the love of the divine arises in us will usually be associated with a particular form or formless aspect of God. Your guru may, the one who gives you your initiation, your Diksha mantra, may redirect your attention toward something else. Just exactly why that is not possible to explain. The way the guru works is really not possible to explain. But sometimes they actually offer you a choice. When I was given Diksha, I was offered a choice of 2 mantras, each representing a different aspect of the ideal. But the thing for us to keep in mind is that all of these forms and formless aspects of the divine are all one behind. There is only one divine presence, which, as Sri Ramakrishna says, takes various forms to please and to have a relationship with the devotee. So don't fret if your mind is drawn to some other aspect of the divine other than the one that is at the heart of your guru mantra. That's fine. Practice the mantra that you were given, but then encourage this other relationship also. If we study the life of Sri Ramakrishna, you see that he had a number of different focuses for his devotion and his spiritual practices. But always behind was the mother, Kali. But he worshipped Rama, he worshipped Krishna, he worshipped Jesus Christ. He even practiced the worship of Allah. And his firm assertion was that they're all paths to the same goal, which is realization of that which is beyond name and form, beyond our any possibility of our understanding it intellectually. It's a matter of experience and realization at that point. So whatever it is that you're drawn to, let that be. But continue to practice the instructions, to fulfill the instructions that your guru gave you for use of your Diksha mantra. Because that mantra, whether we understand it in the beginning or not, is full of the spiritual treasure and power of the divine presence. Very good question, dear. Very good question. Anything else from anyone?
When you said that the mantra always repeats throughout our day, does that mean that we can like think the mantra no matter what we're doing, whether we're at work or mowing the lawn or washing the dishes or whatever?
Absolutely. As a matter of fact, it's very auspicious to do that. And you'll find, as the years pass, that the mantra is always running in your mind. There's always a current of the mantra in your mind. And so it's easy for you to just attach your awareness to it. As you said, while you're mowing the lawn, doing the dishes, whatever it is that doesn't require your focused mental attention, like writing computer code or something like that would. But definitely, when you're driving the car is an excellent time to practice your mantra. Because what's required to drive the car is really a very little part of our mind. We mustn't remove that part from the act of driving the car, but we can chant the mantra. I don't drive anymore, but all the time that I did for many, many, many years, it was a practice to chant the mantra while driving. Rather than listen to music or the news. Not that there's anything wrong with listening to music or the news. It's just, if you want to make a spiritual use of your time, you can chant your mantra. And if you're alone, you can chant it out loud, which is always kind of fun. Good question. Anybody else? That was good.
I have a follow-up question to that, Brahmananda's question.
I'm just not hearing you, dear.
Sorry, I had it on. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, I hear you better.
Okay, there's something wrong with my system, but I'll try my best to speak loudly. A follow-up question to Brahmananda's question. Repeating the mantra while doing your daily activities cannot substitute for sitting down and actually staying some time dedicated to that, to mantra, correct?
No. It's not a substitute for that. When we spend some time, the optimum times, of course, are dawn, noon, and dusk, for us to chant the name of the Lord. And if you can spend at least 20 minutes each time you sit, more if you can, that's wonderful. And that's when you can totally withdraw yourself from everything else, turn your attention entirely within. And this is when, over time, we sink below the level of the active thoughts. We sink below the level of our waking awareness and into a version of the second world, which appears to us when we're asleep as dreams. It appears to us in our spiritual practice as something called yoga nidra. yoga sleep. We appear to anyone who's looking at us, we appear to be asleep. Our breathing is slowed. We don't seem to be, our body is relaxed. Yoga Nidra. And it's the second world. And as we immerse ourselves in that, we find that we become more and more silent, more and more quiet. Our bodies, our nerves, everything becomes more quiet. And in that quietness arises the knowledge that is already present within us. As was said in this talk just now, we are made of mantra. We are, and that spiritual knowledge, that profound spiritual knowledge, that pure devotion, pure love, pure knowledge exists within us already. And when we otherwise become quiet, a teacher once said to Mirabai, "Become so quiet you can hear the blood running in your veins." And this happens. And when that does happen, then these other things spontaneously emerge. Very good follow-up.
Thank you.
Anything else from anyone?
I had a thought about the dream question, the dream aspect of what you were just saying, Brother Shankara, which was, the part of you that remembers your dreams. And sometimes I wake up and it's like I wake up thinking of the mantra, and then you remember your dream, but then you just try to reconcile that. I don't know if I'm making sense. Who you were in the dream to who you are in the waking reality.
Yes.
And it's so strange. I don't know what to make of it. And it's like you're not in control of how you act in your dream. And part of you in your waking reality wants to be.
You can gain control of that second world, the world of dream sleep. This is part of what we'll discuss tomorrow morning in discussing the next four limbs of Patanjali's yoga. That as we gain control of our life force, which is that's the real meaning of pranayama, is restraint of the dissipation of the life force. We find that we have the power to do something that in Western psychology is called lucid dreaming. And it's not necessary for you to do that. It's not like that's something you should do, but it's something that you can do if you wish. And so, this is where we, studying the life of Sri Ramakrishna, we see this great mastery that he attained over all three worlds, waking, dreaming, and dreamless sleep, which is, in Western psychology is called the waking awareness, or the active consciousness, the active subconsciousness, and the latent subconsciousness or unconscious. And it's just different names for 3 different states of our awareness, which become more accessible to us the more we do spiritual practice. As I said, when you become quiet, that which is within you and has always been within you is your birthright, begins to emerge, spontaneously emerge. And that's when your self-identification changes. Oh, I'm not this person who's involved with the vibration outside myself. I am the person. I am that being that is much more real than the outside awareness that is inside myself, so to speak. And so this is when we really begin to believe I am not the body, I am not the mind, I am not the intellect. Because we experience it. Thank you. That was good. Anything else from anyone?
Hari Om Shankaraji.
Hari Om Balakrishna.
This is, actually it's a continuation of Swami's thought process from the last week, what we were studying. And this reminds me, actually, last week from the, Hollywood Center, one of the Swami did a guided meditation.
Mm-hmm.
This was, there was a picture of Durga in the San Diego Center.
Mm-hmm.
He asked all of us who are doing that, just concentrate on the face of the Durga.
Mm-hmm.
And watch it closely, watch it closely, watch it closely.
Mm-hmm.
He said, close your eyes and imagine that red dot. And then the next step, after a while, he said, put your face on Durga. And, continue the concentration on that, the face. This is what exactly, after a while, you lose the consciousness of your body.
Yes.
Exactly, that's what it reminds me. I just wanted to bring it to the attention.
Well, thank you. And that's exactly it. As we practice spiritual disciplines that redirect our awareness, consciousness is always there. Consciousness is. It's that which is not plural. It's primary. This is what Swami Yogeshananda used to say. Consciousness is primary and not plural. But our awareness, you have an awareness, I have an awareness, we each have an awareness. This is the reflection of consciousness. As we do our spiritual practices, we become aware that this awareness is a reflection of the consciousness, and we become aware of the consciousness, which in this guided meditation was objectified as Durga. And so our self-identification changes. You stop identifying with the reflection and start identifying with the pure consciousness, the pure devotion, pure love, pure knowledge. Thank you for bringing that in, Balakrishna. That was right on point. Anyone else before we go on? Okay. The next talk that we'll take up, which will be of interest to all of us, I'm sure. We still have almost a half an hour left. Good. This next talk is overcoming obstacles in spiritual life. every one of us, before we begin the talk, every one of us will have our own particular obstacles. As we practice spiritually, as we do our spiritual disciplines, we find that there are things in our waking awareness and in our active subconscious that constantly try to interrupt us and draw our attention. They are our habitual distractions. But as we study what the Swami says here, we'll see that they probably fit into one of the categories that he's talking about. You can say, well, my particular obstacle fits into this an exaggerated sense of ego or self-importance. I'm easily offended. I'm easily angered by other people's disrespect, and so we'll come up with we will have our particular memories and our particular experiences, but then we'll see as we're studying this that the Swami has these categories, and we'll see, oh, that fits into that. And he helps us resolve it by resolving how those obstacles are overcome. So he starts right off by, there are 5 obstacles in the empirical self. What's the empirical self? The self that we experience. That's our everyday experience. It's a scientific term. There's no question that we experience this self, and these are 5 obstacles that are inherent in that unquestionable experience. There are 5 obstacles in the empirical self: ignorance, the sense of ego, attachment, aversion, and the desire to cling to this surface life. So I'll repeat those. Ignorance, which is primordial. It comes from we know not where, as Sri Ramakrishna said, which leads to the sense of ego. We confuse the fact that there is one eye maker, there is one divine presence with its reflection in ourselves. So ignorance is primary and primordial. It's inborn in us. The sense of ego arises from that. Attachment. We are endowed with materialism and vanity. Materialism and vanity lead to attachment and aversion. And the desire to cling to this surface life. The desire to cling to this surface life is a habit. It's a habit. We are used to distracting ourselves in particular ways. That is our surface life. We are very, in psychology, this is called our coping mechanisms. This is how we deal with life. When something arises that's good, this is how we cope with it. When something happens that's bad, this is how we cope with it. And so, in medical science, there is a term called homeostasis. The body is constantly struggling to maintain a steady state. Now, there is no separation between body and mind, psyche, intellect. All of these things are different words for them, are just a way of talking about it. That phenomenon of homeostasis exists in us at a psychological and psychic and intellectual level also. It's why we're so resistant to change. So this desire to cling to the surface life is, as I said, a psychological, intellectual, psychic homeostasis. It's exactly the same thing that the body is doing at the level of its digestion, nervous system, respiration, all of those things. If you check your blood oxygen level, you'll find that your blood oxygen level varies a couple of percent throughout the whole day. It'll be somewhere between 95 and 100%. This is because the body is working very hard to make sure that that number remains constant. If it goes too low, you begin to experience unpleasant consequences. So this desire to cling to the surface life, again, no opprobrium here, no judgment. It's just a fact. It's just an obstacle to spiritual progress. But it is at a different level this same phenomenon of homeostasis. So again, I'll repeat the obstacles. Ignorance, which is inborn, the sense of ego, which is a direct result of our inborn ignorance, because we identify with the reflection rather than that which is reflected. Ignorance, the sense of ego, attachment, which comes from our materialism and vanity, and aversion, which also come from our materialism and vanity, and the desire to cling to this surface life, which is of this phenomenon of homeostasis, of coping with what happens in automatic ways. To go on with what the Swami says, these obstacles are universal. By ignorance, I mean that which covers the reality. One may have encyclopedic knowledge, but without knowledge of Brahman, ignorance remains. Now that's a powerful statement. Unless and until we begin to sense Brahman, as it says in Om Brahmarpanam, in every action, everything that exists. Consciousness is primary and not plural, and therefore it is contained and is the root cause of everything. But we don't see that for quite some time. So as the Swami says, one may have encyclopedic knowledge. You can know chemistry, you can know writing, you can know music, you can know anything. One may have encyclopedic knowledge, but without knowledge of Brahman, ignorance remains. And to be a knower of Brahman is a direct perception, not an intellectual understanding or faith. Our ignorance is direct and immediate. We identify ourselves with the empirical self And this has to be removed. Now, does it have to be removed? Not if you're content to remain in your present condition, no. And as long as you're not harmful to others or to yourself, although that it can be construed that you're being harmful to yourself when you don't move in a spiritual direction, but that's not that's just one way of looking at it. As long as you're not harmful to others and yourself, you may make as slow a progress as you wish. So that's what the Swami means. If we're going to be a spiritual aspirant, we have to stop identifying ourselves with the empirical self. And so he says, it has to be removed. And as I said earlier, this removal is both a part of our self-effort, and as the self-effort matures and we learn to be quiet, that which helps us remove these obstacles spontaneously arises. The shadow has to fall away before the light of the Atman can shine within us. The shadow of what? The shadow of ignorance, the shadow of our belief in our empirical self, that that's who we are. The shadow has to fall away before the light of the Atman can shine within us. The light of the Atman is constantly shining within us, but we are not aware of it because of the shadow that is between us. And Sri Ramakrishna metaphorized it as a wall rather than a shadow. And he asked M, "Who am I?" And M said, "You are a hole in that wall," so that we can see beyond it. And Sri Ramakrishna was very happy with that answer. So the Swami is saying the shadow has to fall away. Somehow we have to be able to see beyond it before the light of the Atman can be known as shining within us. It's always shining within us. It is that which powers our being. As it says in the evening hymn, speech cannot hold thee nor mind, yet without thee we think not nor speak. And the thee, capital Thee, the thee is the Atman. That has to be a direct and immediate experience. The tendencies of the mind, the senses, the nerves go in one direction, and you try to change them to the opposite direction. Now do you see why I brought up the word homeostasis? There is a tremendous resistance in us to clinging to this empirical self, the surface self, the surface life. The resistance is because that's what we're used to. So it should be no surprise that spiritual work, spiritual effort, spiritual discipline in the beginning is effort. It's hard to make ourselves sit. It's hard to make ourselves chant the mantra at other times. It's hard to stop those things that we're using as our distractions and shift our attention to something that produces new kinds of experiences, new samskaras, higher forms awareness. And I notice I said higher forms of awareness, higher, not higher forms of consciousness. There is no such thing as a higher form of consciousness. Consciousness is. There's higher forms of awareness until we are become aware that our awareness is a reflection of the consciousness that always is. That's the Atman always shining within us. But I'm going to repeat what the Swami said. The tendencies of the mind, the senses, and nerves go in one direction, outward, and you try to change them to the opposite direction. The surface current goes toward the enjoyments of life, and the undercurrent that wants God is going in the opposite direction. Forget that surface current and go to the deeper current. Now, here is a direct order from the Swami. Forget that surface current and go to the deeper current. And when you were in the room with him, you would feel the power of that instruction. You can feel it even in just reading it. Forget that surface current and go to the deeper current. Distractions or obstacles can be overcome only by practice, by concentrating on a single truth, the truth of God. Consciousness is primary and not plural. And so that's what we concentrate on. We use whatever techniques our guru has given us, whatever other techniques we learn for ourselves, but concentrate on the single truth, the truth of God. Make that practice your habit. Because we've got just a few minutes left, I'd like to see if there are any comments or questions about this about this idea of the obstacles and what it is that sustains them and what it is to overcome them. Anything at all from anyone about this obstacles to spiritual life.
Brother,
Go ahead.
Brother Shankara, this is Haima.
Yes, Haima.
And I think we just constantly have to retrain our brain. That's what I'm getting the message while we are meditating to get ourselves settled, concentrating on the single truth, the truth of God.
Actually, Haima,
Yes.
what we're doing is we're retraining our entire being.
Yes, exactly. Yes, you're right.
The brain is one aspect of it.
One aspect. Okay. Gotcha.
We identify our awareness with our brain.
Right.
That's a limited way of thinking about it.
Okay.
And this is one of the reasons that Hatha Yoga,
Yes.
the practice of asana in its various forms, is a good practice, particularly in the beginning, because it's one of the first times that we've ever, unless we're an athlete or a musician,
Yes.
it's the first time we've ever really tried to discipline the body. And we find that there's all kinds of resistance to that. So it's retraining. You're right, it is retraining. But it is
Completely.
the entire unit.
Whole self. Yes. Thank you. Thank you, Brother Shankara.
Yes. And thanks for that question. It's right on. That's what we're doing all right. Swayam, you had something also?
Yes, Brother Shankara, can you hear me now?
Yes, hear you much better, as usual now.
Okay. Girish Ghosh, when he was not able to do any of the, I guess what was recommended, he just gave his power of attorney to Sri Ramakrishna. Sometimes, when things get daunting, I wish I could do that sort of, approach and just give everything in Sri Ramakrishna's hands. Of course, continue the practice, but just let Sri Ramakrishna take over. How do we get to that level of surrender?
Well, this is interesting about Girish Ghosh. One thing that was true about Girish Ghosh is that he was completely sincere. This reprobate drunkard, this tremendously talented, tremendously intelligent human being, had virtually no discipline other than the discipline of his heart. So when Sri Ramakrishna said, do this, he said, I can't do that. Do this, then. No, I can't do that. So finally, Sri Ramakrishna said, well, very well, then give me your power of attorney. And Girish Ghosh, looking for what he thought was the easy way out, said, oh, sure, okay, you got it. What he didn't understand was that once he said that, because of his sincerity, because of the truth of his being, he had surrendered himself entirely to Sri Ramakrishna. He could do nothing without Sri Ramakrishna being the motive power, the volition behind it. So the way of bhakti, the bhakti karma path that is the one that you're on, as I understand it, is actually a much easier path. It's a slower path. But if you want that perfect self-surrender, which is the goal of bhakti, of course, that you imagine yourself finally as a child in your divine mother and divine father's arms, as an infant in their arms. They've taken full responsibility. If you want that, pray for it. Pray for it. And don't be shy. Sri Ramakrishna says, don't be shy. Insist. Make this easier for me. You take responsibility. You take the pot off the fire. In other words, stop creating my universe. You take the pot off the fire and take me in your arms and clean me up. But you have to be willing to let go of all of the toys. You have to be willing to let go of all the surface life. This is what Girish Ghosh did not understand. And so, it took about 5 years, but he became an absolute saint. Mm-hmm. Now, it only took him 5 years because he had the master's constant attention, even after the master passed away. And even then, it was not always easy for Girish Ghosh. As long as we're embodied, it's simple in principle, but not easy. If you read the last couple of chapters of the Viveka Chudamani of Adi Shankaracharya, you will see that even for one who is becoming established in samadhi, there has to be constant vigilance. Thank you, Swam. As usual, a very good question. Good comment, good question.
Thank you, Brother
Brother
Shankara.
Shankara,
Yes, Vijay.
in answer to Swamji's question, I can share my personal experience, and every word of what I heard from you is so true when I find that's what exactly I had to do several times in my life. And I learned it really from the second chapter of Bhagavad Gita, where Lord Arjun was totally despondent, reached a point where he had to surrender himself entirely to Lord Krishna and say that my strength fails me, my knowledge fails me. Please tell me what's the right thing for me to do. And in that spirit of surrender, I have had to do several times this practice before Thakur, saying, please, please take over. I surrender and tell me what's the right thing to do. And somehow, very soon after every time I have totally surrendered to Thakur, things have worked out, and I felt as if he was giving me the answers by talking to me what to do and opening the way for me. Just want to
Wonderful,
share that with you.
wonderful. That's what a wonderful testimony. This is exactly as you said. This is what Arjuna had to do, and if we see, it was difficult for Arjuna. It wasn't until well along in the Gita that he finally said, "All my doubts are resolved." Mhm. So it's a. But again, he had the direct application of the spiritual treasure and power of Sri Krishna to help him.
Thank
Yes,
you.
somebody else?
Brother Shankara, I had a question.
Yes, dear.
I, have been thinking about what you said about Sri Ramakrishna and the Buddha since the last Vivekananda discourse.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm still wondering about Sri Ramakrishna's relationship to the Buddha and Vivekananda's relationship to the Buddha, and this question of desire, and desire being the root of suffering, and why it happens, like what is the cause. And Gandhiji would say that the cause of desire is actually violence and the fear of it, which is so tied to the body. So when we, lust, for example, or greed, it's like, what is the relationship of desire to violence? Because it's so around us all the time.
Well, Swami Prabhavananda put it very simply. He said, desire is nothing more than a restlessness of the mind. Now, we're capable of being very violent with ourselves. We're capable of being tremendously self-judgmental. We learned as children lots of accusations. The first one that so many of us heard is, what's the matter with you? Well, the answer is, there's nothing the matter with me. There's nothing whatsoever the matter with me. But then, that goes on into various forms of self-accusation. So we get violent. And if we're violent with ourselves, we're capable of being violent with others, whether it's verbally and psychically violent, or whether it's actual physical violence. The more primitive our and tamasic we are, the more likely that it will become physical. But a devotee that I know was beaten up in the streets of Glendale, California. He was attacked by a group of 4 young men and beaten up. And they were drunk, the young men were drunk. And the devotee at first was angry and feeling vengeful, and then thought, wait a minute, if I'm going to believe everything that I've been told, this was my karma. What is it that I still don't know that this karma is trying to teach me? And the answer came back, though you are no longer capable of physical violence, you are still capable of psychological and psychic violence. And so now it's the practice of kindness and compassion is his daily practice, so that this is overcome. Now, Sri Ramakrishna and the Buddha, there really isn't a whole lot of evidence of Sri Ramakrishna's relationship with the Buddha. He didn't practice Buddhism and didn't speak about it much. But Vivekananda was very drawn to the Buddha. The Buddha appeared through the wall when he was 12 years old. The Buddha walked through the wall into his room. And Swamiji's disciple, Swami Ashokananda, was very drawn to the Buddha at one point, very, very drawn to him. And finally he had to just say, no, please stop, I belong to Sri Ramakrishna. So these things, Divya, dear, they're above my paycheck. You know? I can't really say I understand the relationship between such beings as Vivekananda and such beings as the Buddha. I mean, Vivekananda is one of the 7 pillars, if we're to believe Sri Ramakrishna, one of the 7 pillars of the universe, the sage Nara, an ever-free soul. So what it is that goes on behind that screen? But this business that Gandhi said, that desire is related to violence, that certainly is something that we can understand.
Brother Shankara?
Yes, dear.
Speaking of violence within to oneself, yes, like I've met you several times and you have pointed out to me that my self-incrimination, like that was something is not right about me, is not good. So that is really violence towards myself, am I right?
Absolutely.
And unfortunately, although I've heard several times that pointer from you, I still, if I hear someone within my family or outside say something negative about me, I start believing it. My first thought is to believe it as opposed to not believe it. Any pointer on how to make myself stronger in that?
Just take it under advisement. Don't believe it or not believe it. Just people who are critical of others are projecting their own inner insecurity. So someone who's criticizing you and pointing out your faults is, first of all, it's your karma. So what is it that you can learn from it? But always have recourse to the ideal. This action and experience suit that I have now is for those purposes and those purposes only, truly. Action and experience. Out of action and experience comes higher forms of knowledge. But you are not any of those things. You are the witness. You are the Atman. You are the divine being, Tattvamasi. And so what you will experience is what you allow yourself to experience in terms of your wounded vanity, your lack of self-confidence that allows you to immediately jump to the conclusion that they're right. Just have resort to the truth. We always can take refuge in the truth. And of course, we can always ask Thakur Ma to come to our aid. After all, Sri Ramakrishna, according to Vivekananda, he came to unchain us and set us free. But he's not going to do it unless we ask. We have to ask. So ask to be freed from this pain, this misery.
So when I hear someone say something, isn't it important for me to be able to not simply say that they are reflecting their own inner self on me, but to step back and say, okay, how much of what somebody is saying is true? Because there may be some truth in it. There,
Well, if there weren't any
observation of
truth in
me.
it wouldn't be your karma.
Mm-hmm.
If there weren't any truth in it, it wouldn't be your karma. So but don't take it as a truth. It's just something for you to reflect on and learn from. As I told the story of the devotee who got beaten up. He came to the conclusion, I'm no longer capable of being physically violent with people, but I am capable of psychological and psychic violence. And so
You explained it very well. And I still have a question that what I'm hearing, how is that my karma? That part is not
anything
clear.
that happens to you is your karma, dear.
Mm-hmm.
Good, bad, or indifferent. You know, there is no effect without a cause.
Thank you.
Okay.
Brother Shankara, can I just say some of my thoughts about what Vijay said?
Quickly, Haima. I'm
Sure.
getting a little pressed for time. I have a 12:30 appointment.
Oh, okay. Quickly, I just thought when Vijay asked that, he can also evaluate when somebody makes a negative comment, are they true or false? If it is true, then you have to challenge them. He can also challenge. I'm going to prove it to them. What they said is not true. I am going to
Haima,
change myself.
don't advise him to challenge them.
Okay. I was thinking he is such an intelligent man, great man.
Yeah, well,
Okay.
that's all very well and good, but don't get into arguments with people about their charges against you.
Oh, no, not arguing them. Inside his mind, okay, I'm going to prove it to them that I am not that. Then
Well,
slowly the change comes.
Haima, you have nothing to prove to anyone. You
To
have
prove it to
nothing-
himself, I mean, himself.
Yeah.
To
but,
prove it,
Yeah. But let's
to prove it to the
let's
self.
just all we have to do is take
Okay.
a look at what was said and
Okay.
see what truth there may be in it, and
There may be,
acknowledge that
sure.
it wouldn't have been said to us if it were
Okay.
not our karma.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Just wanted to clarify.
Okay. I just don't like that word challenge. Mm. That word itself implies a kind of violence.
Okay, I thought challenging our own self inside my, well, I'm going to prove it to them they are wrong. I am going to try myself to be different. Then there is some truth in what they said.
There may be no
It doesn't-
reason for you to be different.
Okay. Okay, you're right. Thank you.
My question for next time, but because we're running out of time, I understand. But the truth is always bitter to swallow for anybody in the empirical world.
Well, some truths are very sweet to swallow. You know, some truths are very sweet to swallow.
Right.
You know,
Exactly. It's a mix. That's always a mix.
as I said, dears, I'm sorry to have to
Yes.
end this, but I do have a 12:30 appointment, and so I am going to ask us we're going to continue with this talk next time, so we'll have plenty of time to talk about obstacles and how to deal with them. So blessings on everyone. May you be safe. May you be healthy. May you be cheerful. Om. Speech cannot hold thee, nor mind, yet without thee we think not nor speak. Love, who art partial to none, we are equal before thy sight. Taker away of our pain, we salute thee, though we are blind. Come to the heart's dark cave and illumine, thou light of the light. Om Hari Om, Om Hari Om. So Jai Shri Guru Maharaj Ji ki Jai, Durga Durga Durga. Go in Mother's loving and protective embrace until tomorrow morning if you choose to join us, or otherwise until next time.
Thank you, Brother Shankara.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.